Hello, welcome to Algebra 2. Go ahead and open your books to lesson 79, page 517. At this point, this is my 8th video that I'm making today. It's a lot of work. So, give us patience whenever you think our videos are very cringy. We love you, we miss you. Let's go ahead and open our books there. The first thing, we are factoring with greatest common factor. The biggest rule for factoring, for any kind of factoring, there's multiple ways to factor, is you always make sure you factor the greatest common factor, meaning what number or what variable do they have in common. Example 1, x to the 4th plus 5x cubed plus 6x squared. It doesn't look like anything that we factored before because there is something we can factor out. If you look at this, we always look at the numbers first. They don't have a number in common. But if we look at the variables, they have a variable in common. They have an x squared. To know what kind of variables to grab, I always grab the lesser of the three, which is there's 4, 3, 2, it's x squared. They at least have two x's in each one. So when I factor that out, for variables, I subtract the exponents. For numbers, I divide the numbers. Here, I have x to the 4th divided by x squared. That's what factoring means. I have 4 minus 2, I get x squared. Then here I have plus 5. We're not dividing a number. 3 minus 2, we have 5x to the 1 power, or just x. And then 6x squared, 2 minus 2 is just 1, or 2 minus 2 is 0, and we just end up with a 6 here. Now, we look at this, and then step 3, see if we have to factor again. This is called the trial and error factor, meaning you look for multiples of C that equal B. Factors of positive 6 that equal positive 5. And your factors would be 2 and 3. Keep in mind, some numbers have multiple factors. You don't just pick any random factor. You have to make sure the factor you pick, when you add them together, you get positive 5. And that is 2 and 3. So then we get our x squared. We can't leave it out. We have x plus 2 because it's positive. X plus 3, and that's positive 2. And that is your answer there. B. I'm going to do different colors. 4x cubed minus 4x squared minus 80x. Always look for the number first. 4, 4, 80. It looks like they have a 4 in common. Now let's look at the variable. 3, 2, and then x. You always grab the lesser of the 3, which is just x to the 1 power. Now we start dividing. Let's divide the number first. 4 divided by 4, I get a 1. I'm not going to put a 1 here. We don't really put 1s unless it's completely by itself. And 3 minus 1, we get 2. So then we get x squared. Negative 4 divided by 4, I get a negative 1, but I'm just going to leave it as a negative for now. And then 2 minus 1, I have an x. You could put the number there if you feel that it's safe for you. That's fine. Negative 80 divided by 40. Sorry, negative 80 divided by 4 is negative 20. X1 minus 1 is x to the 0 power, which is 1. So then that's why you get negative 20. Now, we go ahead and factor again. See if we can factor this. Factors of C that equal B. C is negative 20. Always look at the sign in front. And then B is negative 1. And factors that would equal negative 1. When it's a negative, one of your two numbers is a negative. And there's 1 and 20, 2 and 10, and 4 and 5. If I do negative 5 plus 4, I get negative 1. Negative 5 times 4 gives you negative 20, and that's what you want. When we factor, we get 4x, our number from the beginning, we can't forget that, times x minus 5 times x plus 4. You could flip it, so it could be 4x times x plus 4 times x minus 5. Either way they work. Example 2. Here we have negative x squared plus x plus 56. The reason why we have to factor out a common factor is that negative sign, whenever your first number is a negative, you have to factor out that negative sign. So if it's negative 7, negative 8, negative 2, negative x squared, you have to factor out the negative sign. The first number has to be a positive. So now when I factor that out, all it does, it changes all my signs. This becomes a negative. This becomes a negative as well. So now we have that. We have to keep on factoring. Factor again. Factors of negative 56 that equal negative x or negative 1. We're always focusing on the number. We're not focusing on x or x squared, the number in front of them. So the factors of that would be -8 and 7. There are multiple factors, but try it out and see what numbers you get until you get a -1 when you add them together. -56, one of your two factors is a negative. It doesn't mean both of them are negative. And now we go ahead and factor negative x minus 8 times x plus 7. It's a positive, it's a negative. Make sure you have your correct signs accordingly. B, -3x cubed minus 6x squared plus 72. It looks like we can factor a couple things out. First thing we can factor out is a negative. It can't be a negative there. We have to factor out the negative. Now let's look at the number. 3, 6, 72. They have a 3 in common. Now let's look at the variable. Cubed, squared, x. They have at least one x in common. Now let's start dividing. -3 divided by -3, we get 1. X cubed, or 3 minus 1, we get x squared. Next one, -6 divided by -3, we get +2. 2 minus 1, you're subtracting the exponents, and you just get x. 72 divided by 3, I get -24. X, they're the same x, they cancel out. And then you have this. Then you factor. Factors of C that equal B. C is -24. B is +2. Factors of -24 to negative. One of those two factors are negative. That means the factors are, in this example, 24 is 6 and -4. Now let's go ahead and factor again. So -3x, we always have to bring that first term down. X plus 6 because it's positive, x minus 4. If you change the signs, if it's x minus 6, x plus 4, that's wrong. If you have it in a different order, that's correct. So if you have x minus 4 times x plus 6, that's fine, but make sure the signs are correct because when you add them, you get +2. Example 3. We look at the numbers to see if they have anything in common. They don't. We look at the variables. It looks like they all have at least one b. I'm factoring out a b. Let's look at the x's. 4, 3, 2. They have at least 2 x's, or x squared. Now let's start dividing. B, it cancels out. 4 minus 2, I get x squared. Plus 9, the number, we didn't factor out any number. We bring the number down. X cubed, we factor out the b, they cancel out. And then cubed minus squared is just x. Last one, 20, we don't factor out a number. B, we factor it out, x squared, we just end up with 20. Now we go ahead and factor. Factors of 20, +20, that equal +9, and that is +5, +4. So if it's positive, both of the factors are positive, or both of the factors are negative. That's your two options. And then, when you factor again, you get bx squared times x plus 5 times x plus 4, and that's your answer. All right, 3 more. The top one, always make sure you factor out numbers first. 5, 5, -60, they have at least a 5 in common. It looks like they have at least a b in common. They all have one b. And then for x's, they all have at least one x in common. Now let's start dividing. 5 divided by 5 is 1. This cancels out. 3 minus 1, we just get a plain old x squared. 5 divided by 5 again is 1. B, and b is just b. And then 2 minus x is just x there. It's a positive sign. +5 divided by +5 is +1. That's why I have plus. -60 divided by 5, I get -12. And then b cancel out. The x's also cancel out. Then I have that. Now we factor again. Factors of -12 that equal +1. And that is 4 and -3. One of your two factors is a negative. Then we get 5bx times x plus 4 times x minus 3. Example 4. We'll do 2 more and then we're done. Here we have to make sure they are in descending order in standard form up here. Standard form meaning the exponents are going from higher and lower. So here it looks like this has an x squared. So it's going to be 7pkx. We have a -14pk, and this one just has a -105k. Now let's go ahead and start factoring. Let's see for the number if they can factor. So I know 7 can go into 14, and excuse me. So I know 7 can go into 14. We see if 7 can be divided into 105, and it can. So then we can factor out 87. Let's look at the p's. P, this one doesn't have a p, we can't factor out p. Looks like all of them have at least one k. I can go ahead and factor that out. Now, let's go ahead and start factoring and dividing. 7 divided by 7 is 1. P squared, we don't have anything, we bring it down. The k's cancel out. Negative 14 divided by 7 is negative 2. The p, we didn't factor it out, so we just bring it down. And then the k, we factored out. Negative 105 divided by 7, I get negative 15. The k I factored out, so I just have that. We can have x's or we can have k's. Doesn't matter. They all work out the same way. Factors of negative 15 that equal negative 2. And that is negative 5 and positive 3. So then our answer will be 7k times x minus 5 times x plus 3 because it equals our b term. Example 5. Now we factor that very last one out. Negative 5t squared plus 35t plus 40. There is a common factor. We look at the numbers. First of all, it's a negative. We always have to make sure we factor out the negative. Second, we see if we can factor out any number. We can factor out at least a 5. And then we look at the t's. We can't factor out any t's. Now, let's go ahead and start dividing. T squared, I bring it down. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1. So I don't write it 1 down, just leave it like that. 35 divided by negative 5 is negative 7. And then the t we bring down. 40 divided by negative 5 is negative 8. And then we have that. Then we see if we divide again. Factors negative 8 that equal negative 7. And we get negative 8 and 1. We don't really use the factors of 1 and 8, 1 in the number itself, but some cases we do. In this case, negative, one of the factors is negative, and negative 8 plus 1 gives you negative 7. So then you have negative 5 times t minus 8 times t plus 1. I just realized I've been using x's here. Oops. There you go. And that's it. If you have questions, make sure you email me down there. Always look down there for new information. Miss you guys. Bye.